Pushkin. Corinne Bailey Rae independently released one of my favorite albums of 2023, Black Rainbows. We had a chat over Zoom at the end of the year about the place that inspired the album, the Stony Island Arts Bank in Chicago. And then when she came to LA around Grammy time, we decided to meet up and continue our conversation. Not only about the new album and what it meant to find her own artistic voice again, but also to discuss Refractions at the Stony Island Arts Bank. A beautiful book Corinne's put together cataloging the items that inspired her new music and her creative awakening. The conversation takes us from Corinne recording her third album, The Heart Speaks and Whispers at Capitol in Hollywood, to finding a spiritual home in Chicago, to discovering a mid-century New York subway pageant that led to one of my favorite songs on her new album, the raucous New York Transit Queen. This is Broken Record, liner notes for the digital age. I'm Justin Richmond. Here's my conversation with Corinne Bailey Rae. Have you recorded here much in LA?
Yes, I have. I did my third album at Capitol.
Oh, no.
So I loved being there. I mean, that
Nice.
was amazing. We came for 7 weeks and we ended up staying for 7 months. I mean, not all in Studio A because it would have, bankrupted us.
I was going to say, how much did you spend on this?
It was
record?
a lot. It was a lot. But it was worth it because it was James Gadsden, who's such a brilliant drummer. And it was just nice to be able to be in that space. And anything you played in there, you just play it G on acoustic guitar. I think, yeah, let's write a song with just G. So everything sounded good.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I'd like to go again when I was a bit more together because we didn't quite know what we're doing. I'd like to go when it was like, right, we know what the songs are. Let's work on the arrangements, rehearse, and then you can just be ready to go.
Yeah, leave a little room. Because, I imagine there's some inspiration in that building. So a little room for...
Just the actual sound, for space, and then the echo chamber.
Yeah.
It's really good. And we went into the echo chamber and it still smells of paint.
Wow.
From when it was painted.
Wow, maybe that can't be good, can it? Or
I guess that's probably a lead paint or something. But where the air didn't go anywhere, just like you just close the door. So, yeah, amazing place. Yeah.
I've only been there a few times, but it's so, I still, I've lived here my whole life, but every time I pass that building,
it's so iconic, isn't it, that actual building?
And I always worry about nowadays too, I worry about it when I pass it. Like I feel some sort of, like I hope, I doubt they're going to take it down, but I hope not. You never know,
like,
studios.
do Universal still own it or is it owned by someone else? And when I was working there was a big fuss because they were making big condos nearby, but it was disturbing all the underground stuff, and that's where the echo chambers are. So they were really like, what's it going to do to our... like acoustics, but I think it's probably fine.
How's it being in town? It's so weird. I forgot it was Grammy weekend until yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. I just won this award at the Resonator Awards, which is for women who produce and engineer. It's that organization called Move the Needle. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's set up by Emily Lazar. And so the main thing they've done is sort of analyze music. So they made this analysis of everything that came out last year. And of all the songs that came out last year and all the records, there was only just over 6% that either had a woman producer or engineer. So they're just looking at how they can kind of bring equity to these organizations, including mentorships for young women. And it's mostly coming out of school and, being the person who trains with a mix engineer, because that's the seat you really want to be in, right?
That's how you kind of get
That's how you get the experience. You can learn all you want at college, but when you're actually working on records every single day, and sitting in rooms and working with artists, that's when you really become a master. So I think they set up quite a few internships and there's camps. And then there were loads of big writers there, like Linda Perry was there.
Oh, cool. That's so cool.
She's really good and she's really honest. And then Alanis Morissette was winning an award, as a kind of trailblazer award.
Wow.
I mean, she's such a big writer. Her record, Jagged Little Pill, is the second biggest selling record of all time.
Is that true?
Which I didn't know. It's like Thriller, then Jagged Little Pill.
Whoa.
Yeah. So when it was 85 million
that
records.
record was, I do remember that record being huge.
You couldn't move for that record. And it obviously all over the world. 85 million records.
85 million. Thriller, like just below Thriller.
Just below Thriller. Yeah, I was thinking, is it a Beatles record but it's Thriller.
Oh my, yeah.
I guess it's also with which charts you're looking at and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's massive. But then they were just highlighting all these different engineers and producers that I'd never heard of that were doing big things. They're all sort of Grammy nominated this year. And this woman who's kind of Jack Antonoff's right-hand woman who does everything with him, Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she's the mix engineer and he just won't work with anyone else. And
amazing. Would you ever produce anything? Like, would you ever work in that capacity? Like, help another artist?
I mean, I just don't feel myself to be prolific enough to kind of be a producer for other people. But obviously, I love producing my own music. I mean, maybe in the future I could do
Prolific in
that.
the sense that like you don't think
I just feel like it's not like, oh, I've got 10 records out and then I've got, 2 spare months to produce someone else. I feel like I'm always just trying to like get it right for myself.
Got it.
I did get asked recently to work with someone, and maybe at a different point in my career I could do it. Or if I saw someone who I thought, oh, they're really brilliant and they need a bit of help with the direction and they were up for it. I think it's hard sometimes an artist producer. I've worked with artist producers before where they have a really strong opinion of how it should be.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like the best producers are like, we could do it like this or this or this or this.
Yeah.
I've got all the different angles, whereas I won't have loads of ideas. It's just with my own music, I just think it has to be this, direction.
It's funny. I re-listened again to like every record, like in chronological.
Oh, wow.
Every record is different.
Yeah.
So you at least got 4 different,
Yeah.
like,
Some more angles.
tricks, know?
Yeah. No, I do really love it. I just think it takes me a long time, It's like this hare and the tortoise or something.
Do you feel like you're always like writing?
I feel like I'm always in phases. So I think with this record, I'm still very much in the phase of tell the stories, communicate the stories. It feels much bigger than me. It's really different from talking about your own life compared to talking about these stories and this place. And I feel like I'm in the business of connecting people. I spoke to a radio presenter who's just over at Tavis Smiley's radio station. But I remember specifically the interview, what we talked about. We talked about Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace, that record.
Amazing Grace record.
Yeah.
He brought it for you, didn't he?
He was like, do you know about this record? And I said, yes, I love that record. And we got to talk about that,
I remember
sort
that.
of this, what's sacred, what's spiritual, how people come out of the church and they're kind of punished for it to a certain extent, or, you're really on your own. But how can you ever separate music from spirituality and all those things?
That's blowing my mind because that's actually the conversation. I completely forgot about it. So you said that's how I discovered that record.
Really?
Was from that conversation.
Really? Yeah.
You guys talking about it. And I was like, oh, wow.
So he was, that works then, right? He was recommending it to me, but whoever was watching it, that's such a good album. And it's just a community choir who were excellent.
Insanely good.
Yeah. But they just live nearby. They go to that church.
Yeah.
It's not the all-star gospel choir of, it's just the local people.
Speaking of like spiritual homes, I got to look through the book. It's wild how Chicago became this kind of spiritual home. It almost seems like it's a second home for you, the way you're talking about it.
Chicago just became, and still is for me, it's kind of the center of the world for Black stuff for me. In terms of thinking about the huge migration that happened after the Civil War and after abolition, where did the majority of people from the South want to go, the enslaved people? Obviously, a lot of people stayed in the South and really identified with those states and being in the land and being farmers and being close to nature. But so many people wanted to go to Chicago, the big city.
Yeah.
And so many people came, and so you think of all those, the mixture of all those different cultures. I mean, I sort of think it's all those different Africans that have lived in America for generations, and all the cultures of the various states, and even the cultures of the various plantations,
Right.
Impacting and to what extent people were allowed freedom to move around, because of course some enslaved people were hired out, on different jobs. They drove the masses around, Dave the potter who made pots for people around the plantation, delivered them. And
wow.
So just what that was like, and then coming to Chicago, and then what they brought with them, their traditions, their culture, their food. But yeah, Chicago, I mean, I feel like I knew of Chicago as a, being a British person, a European person, as like the mob, the mafia, the Windy City, the musical Chicago. I didn't think of it as being this center of Black thought and space. I certainly wouldn't have thought, Ebony magazine was Chicago, and then...
Was it?
Yeah.
Did not know.
Yeah, so the headquarters of Ebony magazine were in Chicago, and John Johnson had this building that he bought and sort of decked it out. He became a really wealthy man. The whole family were wealthy because they had Jet and Ebony, Negro Digest, and they would send them all over the world.
Wow.
So he would go to all these fancy places and all these banks, and they would have all this European art on the walls. And he thought, when I get my own place, I want it to be contemporary Black artists and African pieces. So when you see photographs of that building, the Johnson Publishing building, every floor had its own character. There was like swirly carpets that had commission. The furniture was specially made. There was the glass ashtrays and the art on the wall and the Dogon statues and the Marleyan statues. It was like being in an art installation. And the photos, it also looked like something from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
You know, just really like futuristic 60s.
Yeah.
They really heavily documented it. And it was a center for Black Chicago. So when Muhammad Ali was in town, he would go to the Johnson Building.
Wow.
Or when, Shaka Khan or whoever was passing through, those people were always, the building was always fizzing with these entertainers. So I really liked the idea of that. And then just to know the library from that building had gone to the Arts Bank.
Wow.
And that's what the library was. It'd been people who had sent their books to try and hope that Ebony would review it, hope that the magazine would review it. So I just couldn't believe the amount of literature in this library. It was another look at Chicago for me.
How much time have you spent there now?
I spent loads of time though, because obviously I went on that first visit and then I came back and did a 2-week residency, which really was immersive. It was freezing cold. It snowed on the first day and the snow didn't melt all the time we were there. It never snowed again, but it was banked up, and it was
2 weeks
solid. It was frozen. In England, if you drive into a bank of snow, you kind of, the car crushes the snow.
Right.
But in Chicago, it was so frozen, the car would just kind of ramp up, like a 4-wheel drive would just kind of ramp up on these huge snow drifts. And it was freezing, your eyes would freeze. It was November or December when we went. But just to be in that building and see people who'd come out in the cold to come to this building because there was a dance event happening, because there was a music event happening.
Right.
Chiara Lanier had put on this tea party and it had dance, she was singing, it had a contemporary dance performance, it had this tea ceremony that everyone engaged in. There was just always so much going on. There was this artist who was commissioned once a week who would just do these pop-ups in various parts of the building, and you would go and you weren't sure whether he's going to be in the library or he's going to be in this room or that room. You'd just be able to hear the singing and kind of follow
just migrate over there.
Just follow to where it was. And it felt so special that all this was happening in this really beautiful space.
You mentioned in the book too about Chiara Lanier that there were some like singing exercises.
Yeah, she is I guess she's an artist, but she also teaches vocals, and they have this choir that would meet every week. And they were doing this exercise where you moved around the building. You moved around this one room and you had to make a single sound. I can't remember if she gave you the sound or whether you just chose it. Maybe you just chose it, but it was just, one syllable. And you had to have an object that you interacted with as you walked around the space. So it might have been that rocking chair, that might have been my object. So I had to make the sound as I went around. And then each time I came to the object, I had to interact with it. Maybe I sat in it. Maybe I climbed over it. Maybe I crawled under it. Maybe I turned it upside down. But each time it was something. And because you were so focused on this object and doing your thing each time, the part of your brain that was concentrating on the singing just became really loosened. And so I found the things I was doing when I eventually kind of checked back in with it, it was really free and really loose. And of course, everyone else was making their sound as well. So we were all kind of singing together as a choir, but not really paying attention to each other consciously, but unconsciously in our music world we were. So just to hear like all these harmonies and sounds and rhythms and textures, and you'd be challenged. Like the more weird someone else's sound was, the more permission it gave you to do your weird growl or screech or bark or whatever it was, because it was all about, what am I going to do with this chair?
Right.
Can I fit my body through that side? So it was really mind-opening. And I also remember saying, I wish this was my life, and then saying to myself, wait, this is my life. So I felt like there was this huge contrast between maybe the way I had thought about my music making practice, which at that time had really become try and write those hits, sit down and really concentrate and really make it happen and really put this pressure on yourself. And
was that pressure coming from you?
It didn't start off coming from me, but it was very much absorbed by me. When I was making my third record, when we came over to Capitol in Los Angeles, bless the record label, I think they had seen that I had been successful and they really wanted it for me. and for themselves again. So definitely with that third record, I was kind of, how can we make this work? And, I'd had lots of times of either playing people music I'd recorded or sitting there with my guitar in a room full of important dudes who were all sort of older than me and more powerful, who would just sort of say, at the end of a song, they would say, I just don't think it's the first single. That's what I'd get all the time. And so I would definitely be in that position of thinking, well, what is this elusive song that's going to kind of smash the doors in? And of course, for me, on my first record, that had been Put Your Records On.
And did you know when you wrote that? Like, were you like, oh, this is a single? Or
No, not at all. I mean, I guess I was definitely thinking the album that I'd written, because everything else was done, I was definitely thinking we need another kind of up-tempo song. So that's all we were thinking really, was kind of the pace. But it came about really easily and it was really fun. It was really conversational and I liked it. So it wasn't laboured. Whereas I think with my third record, it was just every try. It just felt there was so much pressure on it. And bless the label again, the more time and money you sort of spend on a thing, really wanting to. It's like gambling, right? You just like keep putting the chips down.
But at a certain point, you have so many chips in. It's like, well,
I
gotta keep going.
Exactly, it got in a sort of too big to fail situation for me, where it just can't not have an international mega smash on because it's taken so long and it's cost so much money. And I'm a people person. People would lose their jobs if you don't do well at a certain point in a label. If someone's your guy at the label and they've kept saying, no, she'll do it, just keep, we just need another for $100,000, It's like the heads will roll, and head did roll. So I just was always, like lying in bed with that kind of weight of responsibility. Like, I am a failing pop star and my friends are losing their jobs because of my inability to produce this thing, to pull this thing out of the bag. So then, walking around with Kiara, just singing these crazy bits of music and being with other artists who I thought were brilliant, I just thought, I really remember this thing of music being freeing and playful and creative and pressureless and fun. And I really want to get into that. I want that to be my life. And then, of course, Bing, that was my life. In Chicago, in that building, was my life. And that led to a whole creative, free project in Black Rainbows, where I didn't feel the same pressures as I did when I was making The Heart Speaks in Whispers.
So that was the thought, like, that I wish that music making was fun.
Yeah, I wish I could sort of get back to my first love without thinking, this is really important because it's for your career and it's for other people livelihood.
Yeah.
That's
scary.
Yeah, I think so.
I read a book on Mo Austin, or maybe it was about the Warner Brothers label.
Right.
But had a lot to do about Mo Austin. And there was a story about when they were starting, some A&R guy produced a Van Dyke Parks record. I think it was like Van Dyke Parks' first record.
Right.
And it's very experimental and very cool.
Yeah.
I think it was like the most money they'd ever spent on like a record too.
Yeah.
And it didn't sell at all, but it was very cool.
Yeah.
And so he kind of sheepishly went to like Mo and was like, hey, like, I fucked up. Like, this was really expensive and it didn't sell. And apparently Mo said, well, is the album good? And Lenny was like, yeah, it's amazing. He's like, that's all we can do.
Right.
That's
Job
it.
Done. Yes.
It's like, where's that kind of an executive these days?
It's an important thing to say. I think, to be fair to music executives, the way that people buy music means that there isn't the money stream coming in the same way. I always say to people with my first record, if you wanted to hear, for example, Like a Star, you could sit by the radio and hope it came on.
Yeah.
Or you could go to the shop and buy the CD or vinyl, or in India, tape. But now, if you want to hear a song, you can just stream it. But of course, the streaming the record doesn't bring that much money to the artist.
Yeah.
So there's a big gap now between, I love that song, I have to hear it right now. Or you could listen to it on YouTube, which is completely free and none of the money goes to the artist.
But isn't money going to the label though? No?
The money is going to the label, yeah, but it's the same amount of money going. Maybe it is. And maybe they're sort of all good, but the artists aren't. Like, I would love to know more about it. I feel like someone like Taylor Swift would know the breakdown on those kind of things.
Come on, she knows. She's taking account of everything that's going on.
Yeah, so she's like, let me just re-record all my records, But I think there is money somewhere, but it's definitely not with the artists. I mean, I feel really lucky because I got to have that phase. But I think for new artists, it can sometimes feel for them that the making of the music is just the start. And that if they can then spin their good music into kind of making themselves a cool brand, then maybe they can get the sponsorship that they need to go on tour to, so it's really hard for artists. They're like, okay, I've made a great record, but now I need to, I don't know, get my Instagram figures up so that I can wear these trainers to pay to go on the road. I don't know.
I have a friend who I didn't really know to be a music person, but all of a sudden they have a job now as an A&R person.
Right.
And they were on Instagram on their little story complaining. They videoed themselves saying, I'm spending all day long going through music and I'm finding artists and I really like their music. And then I'm going to their page and they're not promoting themselves. Oh. So why would I invest in you if you're not? I'm like,
really?
Whoa, wait a second. Wait, that's bad.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to.
That's the whole deal. I'm going to their page and they're not it's almost as though they're spending all their time recording music
that I like.
And not all the time sitting in front of a camera telling us what shoes they like or like what products they use in their hair. Yeah, I think that's really crazy. And also being a self-publicist I feel it's kind of counter to the feeling of being an artist, right? Yeah. The feeling of being an artist is like, here I am with my cup full. I humbly bring it to the world as an offering.
Right.
Whereas being a promoter is like, I am the shit. You need to listen to me. This is the best thing you've ever... some art takes out like certain wedges of hip hop where like that have that.
Well, and also I think maybe like, that might have been a reserved space for like the superstar at some point, like the Bruce Springsteen or the whatever, where it's like, I can kind of be both a little bit.
Here I am the boss. Yeah. Or whatever. Or like a Kanye's, where he was at one point with just like people love that kind of swagger. But if you're just sitting in your room playing a song on your acoustic guitar or on your sampler or whatever, you've got to just hope that someone's into it. And I don't know, are we only getting artists who have got a kind of a weird distance between who they are when they're making and then who they are looking at themselves from the outside thinking, what are my marketable traits?
Yeah.
I just feel like there's something that really ill at ease with that for me. But I know that that's how A&R works. It's like they look at the numbers and they say, well, if you haven't got enough followers, then there must be something wrong, instead of thinking, we can help you get followers.
Right.
We can
invest
give you
in
a platform. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's hard for new artists. But I mean, obviously there are lots of great artists coming through, but it's generally people who know how to get that ring light on and get that content done. And that would maybe be prohibitive to other kinds of artists.
Yeah. Yeah. After the break, we'll be back with more of my conversation with Corinne Bailey Rae. We're back with Corinne Bailey Rae. In the book, too, you say, it's been a real journey for me in music in terms of what I've wanted to say and how much space there is for it.
Yeah.
It just struck me. What did you mean by that?
I feel like now it's a revelation. There's as much space as you imagine there to be if you can uncouple from the idea that you're trying to make massive hit music. Like, I love this Andre 3000 record, which is just like, I really tried to make a hip hop record, but I actually wanted to just sit cross-legged and play my bass clarinet.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't a music maker have that phase in their career, especially someone who's already packed the dance floors and there's already been the music you have to play at your wedding and your party and you're getting ready to go out? It's like, why should we expect anything else of artists except kind of evolution? The artists are meant to be the weirdos, the strange ones, the ones who are kind of like listening to the muse, the ones who are a bit out there. And so I think there is as much space as you imagine, and you can say anything you imagine. You just have to not think that a large amount of people are going to actually care, But some people will care, and that will make a deep connection, and that's really valuable.
So how have you experienced then the reception of your new album, Black Rainbows?
I mean, I've experienced it in a really profound and rewarding way. I mean, I think I've experienced it in two ways, maybe three. One is actually live, going to a room, like traveling somewhere on a tour bus, getting out of the bus, getting our stuff ready, getting my clothes on, getting my makeup done, and then walking onto that stage and just being there and saying, I've got some stories for you. I've got some things I want to say. And seeing people react, you know, when we first started our tour, our last US tour, it was before the record had even come out. And I knew I was playing the whole thing. So it was just, you know, you may have heard 2 songs of this whole album, but here we are just bringing it to you. And this,
You had recorded it and everything, but you hadn't.
Yeah, I mean, the album wasn't out yet. So the tour went just ahead of when the album was out.
Got it.
So I think maybe people would have heard, if they were really looking for it, they would have heard New York Transit Queen and maybe Peach Velvet Sky, but nothing else. And just to be able to play the songs and see people's reaction and feel like you're in it with people, you know, to be able to play He Will Follow You With His Eyes and go from this kind of dreamy section into the more disjointed music at the end where I'm singing, I'll be hit with my plum red lipstick, my black hair kinking, my black skin gleaming. And just to say that over and over again, and to hear people like start clapping and cheering and like standing up, and just to feel that in real time, that gave me so much, you know. It made me think, God, this is striking a chord. That's all I want. All I want is to connect with people. And I get that feeling in a room of 500 people, 800 people, 1,000 people, 1,200 people, just small, intimate rooms. That meant the world to me, doing those places, or being able to hear a song and you can hear a pin drop, no one's talking, no one's at the bar, you know, just a song they've never heard. That meant a lot. So that's one way I've received it. I think another way is getting to talk to people like yourself, or being requested to talk with people like yourself. That's meant a lot to me, that the phone has kept ringing, or that, you know, to say, can you come on this? Can you come on this? Can you come on this? Can you come on? Can you talk? Can you talk? That's been amazing, just to say like, oh, it has connected in certain places. That means a world. And then, the same, getting to be on radio and play the music and then have like the feedback come through. Or, you know, we just did a session for Jo Wiley and she's on Radio 2 in the UK, and I had played for her in 2005. I mean, I've been back since, but just to think, gosh, I've been in this space many times, but this is doing a really different thing. And to have people, you know, phoning in. And
Does it feel like a first record again for you in a way? Like, does it feel...
It does feel like a first record, yeah. And it also feels... I think because it's different to what people might have expected, it feels like not cheeky, but risky. You know, it feels like a risky thing to do. But good.
Well, even from like in a meta way, as a listener of your music, beyond like just really liking the set of music, what's exciting about it for me is seeing someone that's been in your life for as long as you've been in our lives take that risk. It's thrilling, and it makes, you know, myself, I'm sure other people too who listen, be like, yeah, fuck it, I want to try something different, because the record, it's really out there and it's really fucking good. You know?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. It's just been good for me. I just feel like, what do I want to do with my time here? I don't want to forensically pour over what I've done before and try and make it enough the same that it's going to catch those people. And that's why I tried to always talk to the label people about the people who bought my first record. They're not even the same now. Like, who a listener was in 2006, it's not the same as who they are in 2024. So it's like, even your audience has changed in terms of who they are.
In a weird way. So I would have been like 16 when that record came out. Loved it. Now I'm a almost 35-year-old dad of 2 girls, whatever. But like, listening to it makes me feel 16 again, because it makes me excited. It's like something new, you know? So
I think it's sort of patronizing to kind of imagine that your listeners, you know, everyone's kind of in a bell jar, like just waiting for the same thing again. I mean, who even wants to buy a same record?
Yeah.
Even if I made it carbon copy, you know, like the Disney films that they do, where it's like, it's The Little Mermaid, but it's live action, but it's exactly the same, but it's different, but it's, you know, I wonder
and
how
it's
much...
a little worse.
Yeah.
It's different, but it's the same and it's different and it's a little worse.
So it's like, how can you ever compete with the really, you know, the thing that you already did? And it's just better to like make a new movie and see what that's like.
Yeah.
The Little Mermaid will still exist. I mean, I did actually like The Little Mermaid.
It wasn't bad.
But it's as an example of the whole way that things are being kind of remade, you know, why not just do something new? Well, the reason is because it's more of a risk, but what the benefit is that it's new art in the world, which is good for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. You do take your time, and you alluded to that a bit earlier. Yeah. Do you feel though like you've found a rhythm in a way that will allow things to come a little easier?
Yes, I definitely feel that. And I think part of the reason the third album took so long is because it was actually a combination of songs that weren't rejected by either myself or a team, so I could have written 3 records in that space. There were definitely songs that were just like a wounded bird that you just kind of lay by the side of the road and just try to start something else. So I think I will never go back to that place. However I make my records now, even whether it's with a major label or not, I like the thing of making the record without anyone. I really enjoyed that this time. So and that's how I did my first record. So you make it and then you sort of take it around like you're a traveling salesperson. You say, it's this, it's weird, it's different. Is it good? Is it bad? And some people say no. And then some people say yes. And then when you find someone who says yes, then you can work from there. I think that's a way that I want to carry on doing it. And,
that's cool.
Having, made a studio and made those kind of investments, I think that it's possible. So yeah, I'm just trying to work out what to do next.
Have you heard from labels, either your old one or
yes,
different ones?
Yes, I have. I've heard from different people who are at the different labels, and it's been really positive. I mean, I haven't heard from any sort of like the giants of any of the labels. And, you think, I wonder if they've even heard it or not. But, or even like my old manager, my first manager is like, I'm so happy you made this. It really sounds like you, and it sounds like you're having a good time. And that means a lot to me, that it's come from a historic me as well. That's not like a reinvention or something.
Yeah. I read in the book that you felt like even the way you wrote the songs was different. I mean, basing this, rather than the songs coming from some internal sense of how you're feeling or something that's happened in your life, you're pulling the inspiration for the songs from outside sources, from these items you discovered at the archive in Chicago. Did you enjoy writing that way? And is that something you keep doing as well?
I really enjoyed writing that way because I really didn't try to write that way. And I think I hear about people who, I don't know, write books or write films, or they say, I was on the tube and I overheard so-and-so. And a lot of songwriters work like that as well, right? So I think because I wasn't trying to write songs when I was looking at that stuff, that first day, I was just curious or nosy, even just pulling open drawers and, I like that. Or like certain things would interest me, certain things wouldn't. And I guess I was drawn to my own things that fascinate me. I looked at a lot of women, I looked at children, I looked at particular eras of America. I looked for beauty. I was really interested in the glamour and fashion of ebony from the 40s and 50s. I hadn't seen imagery of like black women in elegance and gloves and pillbox hats and I hadn't seen enough pictures like that in my life.
I should see more of that, because every time it's flashback to the 50s with Black America, it's the black and white footage of the dogs biting. It's
That's
like, God damn it.
That's what I mean. So I think I had seen so much, vintage blackness that was really framed around civil rights struggle or violent oppression. They were the images that went all over the world for all the reasons. But I think what that does is it makes blackness into a kind of perpetual struggle. Like the work of being black in the 50s is to struggle. And I remember talking to Miss Audrey Smaltz, who was Miss New York Transit Queen 1953.
That's a real thing?
Yeah. There was a competition and it was Miss New York Transit. So that was the competition that she won, and that's how I found her. It was the black equivalent of Miss Subways. When I left the Arts Bank, I was Googling like Miss Transit, Miss Transit. All I could find was these 2 articles that were in Ebony magazine. So it was the only source on the entire internet. But I would keep coming across Miss Subways, which was all of these kind of Doris Day types, sort of posing. And their photos would be plastered all over the tube. Wow. And so you could vote for who you thought was Miss Subway of any particular year. And I think the prize was, free ride on the subway or whatever.
For the year or just one?
For the year.
That's incredible.
So a lot of these women, there were secretaries, they were teachers, they were, they were going to their work, and they're, beautiful women and immaculately dressed. But the competition, even though it was in New York, the competition wasn't open to black women in the 50s in New York. So the black transit workers of New York got together and made Miss Transit, and that's why we see Audrey Smaltz. I think she's the 4th winner ever of Miss Transit. But yeah, because of that and because of Ebony and because someone put it on the internet, I was able to find out about it and actually find Audrey Smaltz, because she became a very famous woman in fashion and media.
Was that the impetus for, or I mean, I imagine she was probably glamorous before, if that's how she won.
Yeah, she won. She was 17 and she was an art student, and she had entered this beauty competition because it lists her as being, I mean, I don't know feet and inches because we're metric in England. Oh, right. It's 5'11", 1 inch shorter of 6 foot.
Yeah.
Okay. But she is actually 6 foot, but they thought it wasn't feminine enough.
So they said,
so it's like she's 5'11", but
she's still dainty.
Yeah. Don't be intimidated, fellas. But yeah, she was the 6 foot sort of Amazonian beauty. Yeah. But she won the competition. I mean, obviously because of her looks, but also she had this folder. She was an art student, so she drew, and so that was her. You had to show your kind of studies or special interests, and I liked the idea of that. But yeah, going back to, when you close your eyes and think of Black America in the 50s and the 60s, it is kind of a police dog. So seeing all this glamour and seeing all this beauty. But I said to Audrey Smoltz, what was it like growing up in Harlem in the 40s, the 50s? Was racism was it an everyday, struggle for me being this, Black English girl? And she's like, honey, no. She's like, I lived in Harlem. We were fantastic. We lived in I didn't know it was the projects. We thought we were muckety muck. She said, we had a library in the basement. We had Black artists on the wall. Da, 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 da. And she was painting this segregated world of Harlem, saying our teachers were Black, our doctors were Black, our bankers were Black, our lawyers were Black. We lived in this relatively safe space where actually our everyday was not thinking about the struggle.
Yeah.
We were just getting on with our lives. And that really blew my mind to think about some Black spaces were safe to the extent that it wasn't the defining factor of a person's life.
Yeah.
They went to finishing school. She went to Miss Celia DeVore's finishing school. She just painted this picture which made me realize that we're always overlaying the kind of political struggle on top of the everyday lives of Black people at that time. That's why I loved Ebony magazine, because it's talking about politics, but it's also talking about the Black families that are putting on an art exhibition in the house, and it's talking about the Black doctor in Canada, and it's talking about hem lengths and wigs and makeup and nail varnish and where you can buy the best powder deodorant. Just the real everyday things of Black life. So Ebony was just this amazing, glamorous, brilliant source for me.
That's beautiful. I'm gonna have to go back and look at some of sometimes I like Google books. I'll go back in some old stuff and look at those, but I should pick some up at like a store and look at them.
Yeah. There's still a few around, because I got one last time I was in Chicago, which on that tour, in November, I managed to pick one up, and now it's mine. It's like 1965, and front cover's gorgeous.
Oh, that's great.
Like that really a real piece of history.
Does every song on the album correspond to something or things in the archive?
Yeah, so every song on the record is directly influenced by an object or a group of objects or the events in the Arts Bank. So that song, Put It Down, comes from those experiences, like with Chiara Lania, or this dance party that happened in the Arts Bank where you had to write down your woes and put them in this big vessel on the way into the party. And I love the party because it was a proper mixture of the hip art crowd who like Fiesta and admire his work. He's internationally collected. He's represented by White Cube. And so those people, and then local community people who, that is the south side of Chicago. So it's a underserved community is the current title. Yeah. And then just like Black, hip, uptown people from the university. So it was a real mixture. When you looked around the room, and everyone was just dancing to this Frankie Knuckles archive for like 3-4 hours, sweating it out in this building, like freezing outside, condensation on the walls on the inside. And then they set fire to all the woes at the end. And the thing that I had put in there, the burden that I'd been carrying, I never experienced it the same after that event, like the actual cathartic thing of dancing it out, being in that building, being around those people, burning it. That was it, done for me. So I'm a real believer in dancing out your woes. And that's what came into that song. When I've gathered up all my woes, I put it down. I make a burden of all my woes and put it down. And then, too much inside, I got to dance it out. And then into the end, I feel so free. I put it down.
In hindsight, was it small in hindsight, or was it something
it was big, definitely. It was sort of getting in the way. It was blocking what then became all this new stuff, just a perception of myself. And I just recently went to this meditation class as well, and they talked about a Hindu god whose work is to slice through the false narratives that you have of yourself. And I remember, I think she's called Shakti. I remember thinking, yeah, I want that, just like burn away all the stuff that's not relevant.
After this last break, we'll be back with the rest of my conversation with Corinne Bailey Rae. Here's the rest of my conversation with Corinne Bailey Rae. What about the song Earthling? What would inspire that?
Earthlings, there was a lot of stuff in the record of what's time and where are we? So are we here now, but we're the future for our ancestors, and we're sort of in communication with them. I think that, you can reach backwards. You can kind of tell them where you are and how far we've come and that we're safe. I don't know. I really feel that. And I felt that a lot after I had my children as well. I felt really connected to the kind of line going far, far back. But I think with the Earthlings, I thought a lot about utopias. In the library, there's a big conversation going on over about 250 years between Black thinkers. A classic example would be an early Malcolm X and a Martin Luther King position. Assimilation versus separatism.
Right.
We find ourselves to be here. The assimilation argument says, here we are outside of West Africa, in America, in Europe, in South America, Black people. But we find ourselves alongside our neighbor. We are human and they are human. Let's find a way to live together and move forward from this moment. The separatist argument says, we are here in this hostile environment. How can we possibly survive? The only way to survive is to turn inwards and separate ourselves from everyone else, whether that's a geographical place like Marcus Garvey back to Africa, or whether that's a spiritual idea like the separatist communities that sprung up in the 60s and 70s, or whether it's economically when people talk about trading only with inside the community, all these different ideas. And back and forth in the library since before emancipation and then from there on, there are different Black thinkers, some saying we can make it work, we're all brothers and sisters, and some saying no, we have to be separate. And so Earthlings is looking at utopia and looking at all these different attempts at utopia, like the Black pioneers going west and making their own all Black towns, some of which were really successful, some of which still exist, some of which were crushed and destroyed, like Greenwood, which was the first incident of firebombing that happened.
I'm not aware. What is Greenwood?
Greenwood was an all-Black town that existed, that was a very wealthy town. And there was an incident where a Black man was accused of interacting with a white woman in a lift, a sexual aggression towards this white woman. And a lynch mob came for this man into Greenwood where he lived. And the Greenwood citizens defended him and said, no, we're not going to hand him over to you. This is a false accusation. And the rumours grew and developed. And eventually the area of Greenwood was firebombed by the people who were outside of the community. And it's the first incident of firebombing used in America. They used agricultural planes. So I think there are some utopias which worked, some didn't. But I think the song Earthlings is about how to make utopia, sort of knowing that it's impossible, but it's asking, can we eat pineapples in the sun? Can we dig our gardens and live? Can we find work and time to dance? How much do we need to work to survive? How much freedom is possible in the world? How much can we share our resources and all have enough? So I am really interested in those questions.
It's like a pragmatic view of utopia. It's like, it'd be nice.
The basics.
Yeah.
Well, it's the basics, but it asks those questions. So I'm the optimist who says, I know it won't be long. Like, we can make this happen. And then I know other people who are close to the song who say, when they imagine it, they kind of imagine it coming through the speakers on a sort of spaceship where, all the astronauts have died and they're just kind of floating around in nothingness. Like we didn't do it. We missed our chance. We're on the planet and the planet's destroyed, by essentially our own selfishness. However that comes out, selfishness is manifests in in racism, doesn't it? The separation of ourselves from other people, the imagination that they're not us.
Other people.
Yeah, we can't, because then when we don't have to imagine them as people, then we don't have to share anything with them. Land, food, resources, love. And so, yeah, that song, I'm an optimist. That's what I have to be, that to get up in the morning.
I like that view. It's more of like a Curtis Mayfield.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There is a train coming, you know.
Yeah, exactly. We can get on board. We can all get on. You don't need, all you need is faith, you know. You don't need a ticket. Yeah, I like that. It's a kind of, I don't know, I guess for Curtis Mayfield, it's a specifically, you know, Christian gospel message, but I think it has the resonance, you know. So what's the train? The train is kind of psychological. It's a moment. It's consciousness. So I'm optimistic in that way.
That's cool. I want to ask you about another song, but before that, it reminded me, talking about Curtis, reminded me that you did a song with Al Green.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you were actually with Al Green.
Yeah, I was I was with Al Green. It's terrifying.
Tell me.
Okay.
I've been dying to find someone who could tell me about Al Green.
It was Questlove. It was Amir who asked me to do it. I can't remember if I think I'd met him then. I had met him. We'd met at a few things, and maybe a Music Cares thing and a Grammys thing. And obviously it's Amir and it's the Roots. And he was producing this Al Green record. So it came to me like, oh, they want you to write a song with Al Green. And I thought, okay. So I had to fly to New York and walk into the room, and there's Al Green. And he says like, yeah, nice to meet you. You know, it's really softly spoken. And he's like, don't worry about anything. You know, when Al Green's in the room, you know, when Al Green is here, there's everything's fine. And he talks about himself in the third person.
Amazing. Does he have glasses on too in the studio?
I can't remember if he had glasses or not. I remember thinking, you know, I'd worked on some chords at home because I am not the best guitarist. And also I thought, you know, I'm really actually going to be there with Al Green. I don't want to be scratching my head. So we'd worked, you know, on these chords for Take Your Time.
How did you present the chords to him? Like,
I was just played them. You know, I had a Spanish guitar, and I was like, you know, Mr. Al Green, are you feeling these? Like, do you like this? Yeah. James Poyser was there, who obviously plays with the Roots, and he's a brilliant organist and keyboard player of all kinds, and obviously Questlove. So we were the band kind of jamming this song, and I sang a few lines, he sang some lines. And
how did the words come? Did you have those already?
I didn't have the words already, no. So it ended up being a kind of, I guess, you know, it's a duet, but there's this big age difference between us. So it wasn't like we were in love with each other. It was more that we were reflecting on, you know, do you remember when we used to take our time? You know, I'd write you a letter and we'd stay up all night, or, you know, now it seems everything's going too fast. And so it's kind of both of us reflecting on longing for a time when, I guess, love and communication could unravel in this real slow longing, which, you know, so much about Al Green's music, that feeling of hot, damp, southern air and love and waiting, you know. It's
slow burn kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, it's so amazing. And it doesn't take much to kind of set it on fire. And so it's all about the anticipation with his music. And so, yeah, I can't believe that it came together. And I remember just sort of thinking, I can't believe this is really happening. It's really Al Green. And Questlove was brilliant, obviously, on the session. He got lots of different people in. I think John Legend was on that album as well.
Yeah.
So there was all these kind of, you felt like everybody in this room knows what they're doing, even if I don't. And I just have to, you know, it's like a sink or swim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Al Green was sweet.
Al Green was like, you just don't worry about anything, you know. When Al Green is here, we can just relax. And, you know, he's a reverend, so he's actual pastor. And then years later, I went to his church.
Did you? That's my next.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go because it's a real church in a real building, and people are there with their babies.
Did you know if he was going to be there?
Women are fanning themselves. I didn't know he was going to be there. I think that is his job, so he's there. You know,
okay.
If he's not on tour, he's just in the church leading the service, you know, and he speaks. There's one of those organists who plays behind the sermon and swells and the passionate parts, and then he holds it down. And then he said, Corinne, would you like to come up and sing something? And I was thinking, oh my gosh, you know, this is the real gospel church. My Christian background is not gospel music. It's like a white Baptist church, you know, someone with a guitar and a rainbow guitar strap and someone playing a tambourine. That is what I know.
Okay.
You know, so it's like my black church experience comes from listening to records.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from sitting in pews. So I was like, oh, what's he going to ask me? But it was Amazing Grace, which I, of course, know. So, yeah. And I remember thinking, don't try and, don't try and like make all these crazy runs. Just sing,
how did
just sing this song. And I think they thought they maybe couldn't do that. So it was really simple how he made it. But I wasn't about to be like, F sharp major, So I was happy just singing.
You didn't call the key. You just did whatever. Okay.
I sang my song. It was a church, so I wasn't trying to dazzle. But yeah, I also didn't fall on my face, which was good. But yeah, I was really appreciating it.
This sounds like the right mindset, the right approach.
Yeah, I don't try to pull any tricks out of the bag at this point. I'll just stick to what I know.
You know what surprised me? I think about this kind of often, and going back to Aretha was like Ariana Grande at Aretha's funeral. I was like, what?
Is that what happened? I didn't watch Aretha's funeral, but I've occasionally, more than occasionally, just sort of hear an Aretha Franklin vocal. I can't remember what it was the other day. And I was just like, holy shit. She's totally unparalleled, a total master in her own lane. And just the ability to control, it's like, it's delicate, it's burbling. You know what it was? It was her and Smokey Robinson singing, ooh, baby, baby.
You heard a duet version?
It's a duet that they just did totally spontaneously, and you can tell it is because Smokey sort of waits for the first note before he does a harmony, and it was on Soul Train. You got to watch it.
I'm going to.
Yeah, and she started singing. He said, "Oh, we should have been a duo," and he says, "It's not too late, baby." And I hadn't quite got them right in time, so it's like Smokey's a bit older than her, and he kind of looks older. He's wearing a jumper, and I don't know, he might be like 40, and she looks like she's 29 or something, and she's just like, her skin's all just like beautiful and choppy, and it's amazing seeing like a woman, and she's a serious statured woman, and then Smokey looks kind of small next to her, and she's the piano player, and he's kind of perched on the end of the thing. It's just like something you maybe hadn't even seen in terms of gender on TV.
Of a reversal, you're right.
That version, I was like, holy shit.
Her piano playing is ridiculous.
Just everything, and like just thinking of her being in church, with her hair pulled back, playing behind her father, who was like a superstar minister, C.L. Franklin, wasn't he? Which you sort of forget about that. She really came up through gospel music and kind of the business of gospel music, right? People travel far and wide to see him. His daughter that could also sing was kind of the sideshow to him. He was the main artist. And just to think coming up under that training, you cannot go wrong from there. But yeah, I think Aretha is probably the absolute pinnacle, She's the top. So, and you always feel like she's there, that she's reached kind of the top of her range, and then the show was just like 17 more, like whole tones from there. Just like she just shifts a gear. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Always another level.
Yeah. I always wonder, I shouldn't say I worry, I wonder about the later part of her career, and it sort of makes me feel sad for music that in a way, like in the 80s, there was sort of less room for a singer. There was less room for, I don't know, late phrasing or taking your time or space. Like the arrangements became really dense. Mm-hmm. And the only type of voice that could sit on top of it would be like a sort of Michael Jackson voice, there's loads of air in there. It's really light. Of course, Michael stabs through at important times. But I felt like in the 80s, there wasn't really the room in production in hip music. I always feel sad when music kind of takes a turn and it means like an artist just gets sort of chucked away, like how it was for Bill Withers, kind of. So are you going to do disco, Bill? No. Okay, well, bye. And then you don't really hear his records, into the 90s, and obviously then there's that cover of Lovely Day and he's sort of back out. That's again another thing I think of as artists. Was Bill Withers' label saying, well, look how well Stevie's doing. Well, look how well this person's doing. And live from Carnegie Hall didn't have a good reception. It's one of my favorite records of all time.
Insane. That's an insane record.
Yeah, but it wasn't well received because my dad's got these magazines and it wasn't sort of well reviewed. It said something like, it's old material and and it didn't have the spot. I was thinking, at Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, but it's elevating all the songs it was like it's all the songs but just I don't want to say better, but it's just another
Bill
gear.
Withers
It's another
talking about Grandma's hands for longer than the length of Grandma's hands. But that's the version I play to my kids, and they know that speaking part as well as they know the song,
cool.
you know? And it's like, I love that old lady. Love that old lady. Just his rap, his talking is as great as the song. You know?
Really
What a good
is.
person, what a good human. So that's the other thing I think of as an artist is you can be in a moment and think, oh, well, my work is not as well known or as popular as X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, and E. But that's not why you're doing your thing. You're doing your thing because you're doing your thing.
Yeah.
And I think there's always time. You know, sometimes people might not get into a record till the person's died, but then if it's made, it's there. You know?
Do you think of yourself as a singer?
I think of myself as a singer, and I think of myself as a music maker. You know, I like my voice. I don't know, I remember doing loads of award shows and stuff with my first record and thinking, oh, it's funny when you're divorced from like, it's not your song, it's not your arrangement, it's not your production. I'm not playing my guitar, it's not with my band.
Yeah.
You know, I'd feel really like, well, what can I bring to this? They literally want me to sort of put a dress on and heels and just kind of go. But I did find that I had something to say. So yeah, I do see myself as a singer.
What were the best versions of that in your mind?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I got to sing an Aretha Franklin song. I got to sing, I'm trying to think, Angel. It was Music Cares was honouring Aretha Franklin. So although I never got to meet her, I was kind of like, I was next to her, you know, on the red carpet. So she had this white fur coat on. It's like, it was kind of split low. So you could see her, you know, her beautiful figure. And she played a few songs at the end of the night and that was amazing. But yeah, I remember singing. I just played. It was Abe Laboriel Jr. and
he's great.
Laboriel Sr. And so, yeah, he plays with Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
And then I think his dad plays guitar.
Yeah.
So that even just the band was ridiculous. And I think I had my guitar. I don't even know I did, but I just was playing the chords really simply. But yeah, getting to do that and knowing she was there, that was really amazing.
And it worked.
Yeah.
You feel like it worked. It
worked. It worked. And I'd heard she liked it. You know?
That's great.
And so that's all you can.
She can be.
I think a lot of people were really trying to out sing Aretha kind of thing, which is like an Aretha Franklin tribute. But I think everyone was just trying to shine.
Yeah.
My way of shining was like, try not to do that. Don't try to do that thing. Just try and, you know, this is a good song. I was sort of honoring her as a songwriter. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks to Corinne Bailey Rae for meeting up in LA to chat about her book, Refractions, at the Stony Island Arts Bank with us. You can hear a playlist of our favorite songs from Corinne Bailey Rae at brokenrecordpodcast.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Broken Record. Broken Record is produced and edited by Leah Rose with marketing help from Eric Sandler and Jordan McMillan. Our engineer is Ben Tolliday. Broken Record is a production of Pushkin Industries. And if you like this show, please remember to share, rate, and review us on your podcast app. Our theme music's by Kenny Beats. I'm Justin Richmond.